Lil Durk is just days away from the biggest trial of his life, and he's finally opening up from behind bars. Durk appears to be apologizing for some of his past choices and revealing what he wants to change, but that's not all. He's making some major revelations too. Let me catch you up. Back on March 31, from inside federal custody, Lil Durk sent out a minute-long voice message to his fans. No warning, no big rollout, just a recording that dropped on social media, while he sat waiting for a trial date that had already been pushed back multiple times. On a Tuesday, the incarcerated rapper shared a minute-long voice message to fans on social media, extending a warm greeting and letting them know what he's been doing while locked behind bars. Opening with an update on his mental state and his mind, saying he'd been reading books and working on his patience. That alone would have been news. A man facing the possibility of life in prison, taking a moment to check in with the people who followed his music for over a decade. But it's what came next that turned heads. Durk revealed what he'd been reading while locked up, including Pawns in the Game by William Guy Carr, a book about a conspiracy to establish one government to rule the world, and he brought up the works of activists Fred Hampton, Elaine Brown, and Huey P. Newton. This isn't the guy from the Pissed Me Off video anymore, at least not in his own telling. This is someone claiming to have spent his time in a cell reading about revolutionaries and government conspiracies, trying to reframe how he sees his own life and his own choices. Then came the part that felt closest to an apology, not to any one person, but to an entire generation of kids who grew up on his music. After explaining his respect for these revolutionary figures, Durk expressed his intent to help kids out by changing his message, saying it had been sitting on his heart to save the generation, to save these kids, because he was tired of being a pawn for the culture, entertaining and being ignorant. Think about that phrase for a second. A pawn for the culture. That's a grown man sitting in a federal detention facility with a murder-for-hire case bearing down on him, saying the very thing that made him famous, the drill music, the beefs, the persona, might have been a trap he walked into without realizing it. He didn't stop there. Durk ended his message by reiterating the importance of being a positive influence in the lives of kids, saying they've got to be their heroes, and that the next generation has to look up to them in a positive way. It's the kind of statement that from anyone else might sound like a publicity move. But coming from someone staring down a trial that could put him away for the rest of his life, it landed differently. Fans didn't hear a marketing pivot. They heard a man taking stock of everything. The music, the feuds, the culture he helped build, and questioning whether it was worth what it cost him. And here's the thing about timing. This wasn't some random moment of reflection. Lil Durk issued this message to fans while sitting in federal custody, waiting for his murder-for-hire trial to start on August 20, related to the death of Saviaya Robinson. Every word of that message came from a man who knew exactly how much was riding on the months ahead. He wasn't just talking about self-improvement in the abstract. He was talking about it while his legal team was buried in motions, hearings, and an indictment that kept shifting shape underneath him. What makes this moment stand out even more is who joined his defense right around the same time. His murder-for-hire trial related to the death of Saviaya Robinson is set to begin on August 20, with attorney Brian Steele joining his legal team. Steele isn't just any lawyer. He's the attorney who spent years in the trenches, defending Young Thug during the YSL RICO trial in Atlanta, one of the most closely watched rap-related prosecutions in recent memory. Bringing him on board signaled that Durk's team knew exactly what kind of fight was coming, and they were building out a roster capable of handling a trial, where rap lyrics themselves would become evidence. So picture the scene: a rapper who built an entire career, and in many ways an entire persona, around loyalty to Chicago's streets and to his fallen friends, sitting in a cell reading about government conspiracies and civil rights leaders, then recording a message telling kids not to be pawns like he was. It's a strange kind of reckoning, playing out in real time, months before a jury would even be seated. Whether it was genuine reflection or strategic positioning ahead of trial, it gave the public something they hadn't heard from him before: vulnerability, doubt, and something that sounded a lot like regret. That message didn't exist in a vacuum either. It came in the middle of a case that had already dragged on for over a year and a half, with delay after delay. And it came from a man who, by his own team's account, had never asked for a single one of those delays. Banks has not joined any of the continuance requests and has not waived his speedy trial rights. Every other name attached to the case wanted more time. Durk didn't. He wanted to get in front of a jury and get it over with. That detail matters because it frames everything that followed: the reflection, the reading, the talk of saving a generation, as something happening to a man who was ready to face his accusers, not someone hiding from them. And that's where the story has to go next. Because to understand what Durk was reflecting on, what pushed him into a cell in the first place, you have to go back to how this all started. A gas station in Los Angeles, a rivalry that had already claimed one life, and a case that the federal government says traces directly back to the murder of his closest friend. To understand why Lil Durk is facing a federal jury this week, you have to rewind to 2020 and to the death of Davon King Von Bennett, Durk's close friend, protege, and one of the most promising voices to ever come out of Chicago drill music. Von was shot and killed outside a club in Atlanta, and in the aftermath, blame and tension spread fast through the rap community, eventually landing on rapper Quando Rondo, who prosecutors say Durk held responsible. That tension didn't stay in the past. According to federal prosecutors, it turned into a plan. The case centers on a 2024 indictment accusing Durk of putting a bounty on fellow rapper Quando Rondo in retaliation for the 2020 killing of King Von, Durk's close friend and longtime collaborator, with Rondo shot at a Los Angeles gas station in 2022 and surviving the attack, though another man was killed in the gunfire. That other man was Saviaya Lil Pab Robinson, Quando Rondo's own cousin, caught in the crossfire outside a Los Angeles gas station near the Beverly Center in August 2022. The government's version of events is stark. The Justice Department alleges that Durk orchestrated a shooting at a Los Angeles gas station in August 2022, targeting Quando Rondo, but instead killing the rival's family member in a shooting near the Beverly Center that left the victim dead and put many others in danger, according to federal authorities. When the Justice Department first announced the charges, the language from prosecutors was blunt. U.S. Attorney Martin Estrada didn't mince words, calling the shooting a cold-blooded act of violence that put innocent people in danger. For 2 years after that shooting, Durk kept releasing music, kept touring, kept building his brand as one of the biggest names to come out of Chicago drill. Then, in October 2024, that all stopped. Durk was taken into custody by U.S. Marshals in Broward County, Florida, after FBI agent Sarah Corcoran stated that he had booked 2 flights from South Florida airports, one headed to Dubai and another to Switzerland, before arranging a private flight to Italy. But authorities arrested him before he could board. That detail became a central part of the government's argument for keeping him locked up. Prosecutors framed the multiple international bookings as evidence of flight risk, something that would follow him through every single bond request for the next 2 years. And there have been a lot of those requests since his arrest. Durk has submitted several bond proposals, all of which have been rejected, including one last June for a $4.5 million package that included cash and 24-hour home detention. None of it worked. A judge rejected Durk's request for a $4.5 million bond in June 2025. Every attempt to buy his way into home confinement, no matter how elaborate the security package, ran into the same wall, a judge who wasn't convinced he'd stick around for trial. Given the private jet bookings on the night of his arrest, the formal charges themselves painted a much bigger picture than just one shooting. Court documents allege that Banks conspired with his OTF associates to murder Bowman and offered a monetary reward for his murder, using funds from himself and OTF-related ventures to finance the conspiracy. And they also show that Banks was suspected of being involved with several murders and attempted murders, most notably the January 2022 murder of a member of a rival gang. 6 people total were swept up in the case alongside him. The trial involves American rapper Durk, Lil Durk Banks, and 5 associates from his record label, Only the Family, all arrested in Broward County, Florida, on October 17, 2024. Durk's family didn't stay quiet while all of this unfolded. As the case built and Durk sat in custody month after month, his wife, India Royale, speaking on behalf of the whole family, pushed back hard on how the government was building its case. On behalf of Lil Durk's family, his wife reacted to his indictment by accusing the authorities of reportedly fabricating evidence against him, issuing a statement asking the public, the fans, and the culture to stand with them. That wasn't just a show of loyalty, it was a direct shot at the credibility of the case being brought against him, months before anyone even knew when a trial would happen. One of the sharpest parts of that pushback centered on Durk's own music. Prosecutors had pointed to lyrics as evidence of intent, and the family said that argument didn't hold up under basic scrutiny. The rapper's lawyers have stated that the prosecution's assertion that the rapper describes the alleged attack on a song is incorrect, as it was written months before the shooting. That distinction, lyrics written before an event being used as if they described it after the fact, became one of the recurring fault lines in the entire case, a preview of a much bigger fight over music as evidence that would resurface right up until the week of trial. For a case built on a bounty over a rap rivalry, it's fitting that rap lyrics themselves would become one of the most contested pieces of evidence. And that fight over what a song can and can't prove in a court of law turned into one of the defining battles of the 2 years between Durk's arrest and his trial date. To really understand what he's walking into this week, you have to look at how his legal team fought, tooth and nail, over what a federal jury would even be allowed to hear. If there's one thing that defines the 2 years between Durk's arrest and his trial, it's delay after delay, followed by legal fights that grew sharper as the date got closer. What started as a straightforward murder-for-hire case turned into something far messier, and Durk's own frustration with the process became one of the most consistent threads running through the entire saga. The case's complexity became apparent almost immediately. The trial delay stemmed from the case's complexity and the volume of evidence involved, with prosecutors reviewing over 30,000 pages of evidence, including digital files and surveillance footage. That evidence load pushed the original October date to January, then to May, and eventually further still. A California judge moved the trial date to May, and every co-defendant except Durk himself asked the court for more time, a request granted because of the unusual and complex nature of the case. Durk wasn't the one asking for more time, he was the one stuck waiting on everyone else. By February 2026, the case took another turn. The decision meant the Grammy-winning rapper would remain in custody, without bail for an additional 4 months before reaching a jury, with his trial previously scheduled for April, now set for August 20. His attorney, Drew Findling, made the frustration public. In a statement, Durk's attorney said they were fully prepared to proceed to trial and that the matter was continued by the court over their objection. Every delay chipped away at a man who'd already spent well over a year behind bars without ever being convicted of anything. Then, just weeks before the August date, prosecutors tried something that even the judge found suspicious. In June, they added a wave of new charges that threatened to blow the whole case wide open. Durk's lawyers said prosecutors had suddenly piled on a bunch of new allegations and charges, including drug trafficking, robbery, and an old Atlanta shooting, turning the case into something entirely different. His team didn't hold back in their filings, at one point describing the new charges as an attempt to allege racketeering and as many unrelated accusations as possible. It read less like a continuation of the original case and more like an entirely new indictment stapled onto the old one. The judge overseeing the case, Michael Fitzgerald, wasn't buying the government's explanation either. During a tense hearing in mid-July, he pressed prosecutors on their timing and motive, and the exchange got heated. Lead prosecutor Ian Ianniello argued the new counts were tied to the existing charges, but Fitzgerald said he viewed the new charges as a strategy to bolster the case, with separate incidents that looked bad for Durk, telling him bluntly that he'd have a better chance of winning if the Chicago count was tried alongside the Los Angeles murder. The judge's response cut right through the legal maneuvering. "You treat that as a feature," the judge said. That skepticism turned into a real win for Durk's team. The judge granted Lil Durk's motion to sever, handing the defense a pretrial victory, with the newly added Chicago-related counts now to be tried separately, while the Los Angeles murder-for-hire trial remains set to begin August 20. And in his order, the judge said the government failed to show it would be prejudiced by 2 trials. Findling didn't hide his relief. "We are very happy with the court's order," he told reporters, adding that for 21 months, the defense had remained unwavering in their commitment to Banks and his innocence, and that they looked forward to the trial. But not every ruling went Durk's way. Just over a week before jury selection, the defense lost a battle they'd fought hard on, keeping his music out of the trial entirely. A federal judge ruled that the rapper's video and lyrics, for his hit single Pissed Me Off could be used as evidence, granting prosecutors' request over the defense's objection, with prosecutors arguing the song shows Durk's resolve to avenge the death of King Von. The defense had pushed back hard against that decision, warning it would confuse jurors and unfairly tilt the case. Durk's defense fought the admission, saying it would create so much risk of prejudice and confusion. The government's theory tying that song to the shooting was specific and damning if a jury believes it. According to prosecutors, Durk blamed Quando Rondo for Bennett's death and was seeking retribution when he allegedly orchestrated a hit on Bowman that instead killed bystander Saviah Robinson in Los Angeles. That's the exact bridge prosecutors need jurors to cross, from a song about grief and anger to an actual conspiracy to kill. And with days to go before opening statements, that bridge is now something a jury will be allowed to hear about directly? Even smaller pieces of evidence turned into fights. Just weeks before trial, Durk's team went after a 2021 text message that had surfaced as part of the case, arguing it never should have made it into evidence at all. There was an alleged text message from 2021 that turned up as part of the case, but Durk's legal team contended it had been in the custody of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Since that time, seized unlawfully after Durk was the victim of a home invasion. Every scrap of digital evidence, every old lyric, every text, all of it became a battlefield in the weeks leading up to trial, each side fighting over what a jury would and wouldn't be allowed to weigh. By the time the dust settled on all these pretrial fights, the outlines of the actual trial had become clear. During a pretrial hearing on August 13, the prosecution revealed they had 35 witnesses ready for trial, with 20 of those being key witnesses, 35 witnesses, 20 of them central to the government's case. That's not a small trial. That's a case the government has been building for nearly 2 years, and it's about to be tested in front of a jury whose identities are being closely guarded. Prosecutors said they would ask the court to grant anonymity to the 16 jurors chosen for the trial, citing security concerns. All of this legal maneuvering happened while Durk sat behind bars, watching his case get pulled apart and reassembled in real time. And through every hearing, every ruling, every setback, there was one person who never left his side, showing up to the courtroom itself and standing by him publicly, no matter which way the legal winds blew. Legal battles like this one don't just involve lawyers and judges. They involve the people closest to the person on trial. And for Durk, that circle has been small but loud. At the center of it is his wife, India Royale, whose public loyalty became one of the most consistent storylines of the entire case. Royale wasn't just posting from a distance, she showed up. During a 40-minute hearing in July, which Banks' wife India Royale attended, Judge Fitzgerald pressed prosecutors on why they had waited so long to file the additional charges. That's not a small commitment. Flying out, sitting through hours of legal arguments about racketeering statutes and severance motions for a relationship that's already stretched across nearly a decade and multiple public tests. That loyalty had been questioned before, and Royale didn't let it slide. When rumors circulated that she was moving on while her husband sat in custody, she shut it down fast. India Royale clapped back at rumors that she was leaving Lil Durk behind amid his murder-for-hire trial, responding directly on social media to a post that questioned her loyalty. Her response was short and unapologetic, telling critics to back off and stop pushing the narrative further than it needed to go. She'd made her position clear well before that too, posting a message that read as both devotion and defiance. She made a public declaration of loyalty, sharing a photo of the pair on her Instagram story, and adding that the whole world could go sour on him, but she was never switching up. That single line became something fans quoted back at her for months, a shorthand for exactly where she stood, no matter what came out in the case. Royale didn't stop at personal declarations either. She put her name behind the family's broader argument that the case against her husband had been built on shaky ground. When the fight over his lyrics being used as evidence first became public, she was the one who put the family's objection into words. In a statement released and posted as a video by Durk himself, his family slammed the government's use of his lyrics and for criminalizing rap, with Royale writing that the recent developments had brought a harsh truth to light, that the government presented false evidence to a grand jury to indict him, and that this wasn't justice, but a violation of the very system meant to protect everyone. Durk wasn't just leaning on his wife, either. Other artists in his corner spoke up publicly, including one of the most legally battle-tested rappers in the game right now. Rapper Young Thug is among Durk's supporters calling for his release, writing "Free Smirk, please God" in a tweet. Coming from someone who'd just gone through his own years-long RICO trial, that show of support carried extra weight, one artist who knows exactly what a courtroom battle like this does to a person, reaching out to another going through it. That connection went beyond a tweet. The same attorney who guided Young Thug through his trial ended up on Durk's defense team. Brian Steele, known across the industry for his work in Atlanta, brought a level of experience specifically suited to cases where music and gang allegations collide in front of a jury. Talking about his approach to defending high-profile clients earlier this year, Steele described getting close to the people he represents, saying he gets very close to his clients and meets their families because if he's going to defend somebody, he has to be invested. He has to believe in the person, and he has to make it feel like his own life is on the line too. That's the mindset Durk brought into his corner for the biggest fight of his life. Beyond the inner circle, there's been a steady current of public sentiment tracking every hearing and every ruling. Fans picked apart each procedural win and loss in real time, treating the case less like a courtroom proceeding and more like a running story with new chapters dropping by the week. Durk's legal battle has drawn widespread attention across the music industry, with supporters continuing to monitor developments closely, and fans have seen various moves as a quiet show of solidarity amid his legal battle. That attention only grew once the case moved into its most dramatic pre-trial stretch, the severance fight, the fight over "Pissed Me Off," the fight over the old text message. Every ruling turned into a headline. Every headline turned into a wave of reaction online. By the time August rolled around, Durk's case had become one of the most closely tracked legal stories in hip-hop, not just because of who he is, but because of what the outcome could mean for how prosecutors use rap music and old associations against artists going forward. And through all of it, the hearings, the family statements, the tweets from other artists, the new lawyer joining the team, Durk himself sat behind bars, unable to attend his own son's milestones, unable to do anything but wait and watch his legal team fight on his behalf. Lil Durk couldn't attend his son Angelo's graduation because he's currently locked up in a federal detention center, awaiting trial in California. That's the reality behind every headline about severance motions and jury anonymity. A father missing his own child's milestones with nothing to do but wait for a jury of strangers to decide what happens next, which brings everything to where it stands right now. The support system is in place. The legal fights over what evidence comes in have mostly been settled. And in just 2 days, all of it, the reflection from behind bars, the family's accusations against the prosecution, the years of delays, collides in a Los Angeles courtroom, where a jury will finally hear the case laid out in full. So here's where things stand. In 2 days, Lil Durk walks into a federal courtroom in downtown Los Angeles to face the exact charges he's been fighting for nearly 2 years, accused of orchestrating a hit on Quando Rondo that instead killed Saviaya Robinson outside a gas station in 2022. Everything that's happened up to this point, the severed charges, the admitted lyrics, the years in custody has been building toward this one date. The scope of what prosecutors plan to bring is significant. With 35 witnesses lined up, 20 of them considered key to their case, the government has spent nearly 2 years assembling a narrative that stretches from King Von's death in 2020 all the way through the gas station shooting 2 years later. And thanks to last week's ruling, jurors will get to see and hear "Pissed Me Off" as part of that story, whether Durk's team wanted them to or not. There's context that gives the defense some real footing too. Even with that loss, a key development in the case saw prosecutors announce they will not seek the death penalty, and investigators reportedly found no incriminating evidence on his iCloud or Twitter accounts. That absence of digital evidence on his personal accounts is the kind of detail that could matter a great deal to a jury trying to separate a rap persona built around loyalty and revenge from an actual criminal conspiracy. It's worth sitting with what's actually being decided here. This isn't a case about whether Durk wrote angry lyrics after his best friend was murdered. Plenty of artists have done that without ending up on trial. It's about whether those lyrics, combined with financial records, witness testimony, and the actions of his associates add up to proof that he actually ordered a killing. That's the line a jury has to walk, and it's a much narrower line than the headlines about murder for hire might suggest. And that's exactly why the voice message from March carries the weight it does. A man doesn't record himself from a jail cell talking about being tired of being a pawn, about wanting to save the next generation from the same traps he fell into, unless something in him has actually shifted. Whether that shift came from guilt, from genuine reflection, or simply from 2 years of isolation with nothing but books and time. Nobody but Durk knows for certain. But the words are out there now. Permanent, available to be replayed by anyone, including potentially a jury weighing who he really is. What's clear is that the reflection didn't come with a confession attached to it. Nothing in that message admitted to ordering a hit, financing a conspiracy, or doing any of the things prosecutors allege in their 30,000 pages of evidence. What it did was humanize a man who, for 2 years, had mostly existed in headlines, as either a victim of an overreaching prosecution or the architect of a deadly plot. For 1 minute, he was neither of those things. He was just a person, locked up, trying to figure out what kind of example he wants to set going forward. That distinction matters, heading into a trial where every word he's ever put on a record could be picked apart in front of 12 strangers deciding his fate. The government's whole strategy leans on the idea that Durk's music reveals his true intentions. His own message from custody complicates that a little. Not because it excuses anything, but because it shows a man capable of stepping outside of that persona entirely, questioning the very career built on it. Meanwhile, his family keeps pushing their version of events just as hard as the prosecution pushes theirs. The accusations of fabricated evidence, the objections to using his lyrics, the insistence that a shooting can't be pinned on someone through inference and old beef alone. All of that will be tested in real time in front of a jury starting this week. India Royale will likely be there again, just as she's been at nearly every major hearing along the way. Young Thug and others in the industry will keep watching from a distance, having lived through their own versions of this exact fight. And Durk himself will be the one sitting at that defense table, the same man who recorded himself weeks earlier talking about wanting to be somebody kids can look up to, now needing a jury to look at him and decide whether the man behind that microphone was capable of the very things the government says he ordered done. 2 years of delays, severed charges, evidence fights, and family statements all come down to this. A jury in Los Angeles, a defendant who never asked for any of the postponements that got him here, and a case that's about to test just how far a person's own words can be used against them in the search for the truth about who they really are.